Next on the news, religious artwork that represents the faithful in much broader strokes.
What you see behind me is the power of representation. I'm Jessica Easthope with how students here at Salve Regina Catholic Academy are seeing God and themselves in a different light.
The U.S. bishops gearing up for their fall conference to begin. On the agenda this year, the renewed focus on the Eucharist and a new document on the topic.
Not just group A, not just group B, but even those in the back.
Getting everyone involved in the Synod discussions, including the youngest Catholics. And if this meeting is any indication, our kids have a lot to say about the future of the church. Plus, the Rockefeller Center tree arriving in VIP fashion, escorted by New York's finest. I'm Christine Persichetti. It's all coming up right now on Currents News. God made man in his image, but for centuries, artwork has depicted the Holy Family like only a small portion of the population. So now, as we're celebrating Black Catholic History Month, the students at Salve Regina Catholic Academy are showing off an art collection that looks a lot more like them. Currents News' Jessica Easthope reports from East New York.
They have like darker skin and their beards look curly.
We were all made in God's image and likeness.
It looks nice.
But the reality is these students have to look a little harder to find an image of Jesus that looks like them.
All cultures.
One place where they see their diversity reflected in faith is right here in the hallways of Salve Regina Catholic Academy in East New York.
Usually, they're represented as white people or Caucasian people, and it feels nice to see different people of color.
So in a time and era that we live in, diversity is very important.
13-year-old Brennan Elder says here at school he's represented, but he doesn't see many other images of Jesus as Black.
If you search up Jesus Christ on Google, the first 3 pages are going to be white, straight hair, white, straight hair.
So we tested his theory, and sadly, he's right.
Obviously, Judas is holy.
Salve Regina decided to change up the depictions of the Holy Family, Last Supper, and other iconic images at a student's request. That student has now graduated, but Pastor Father Brendan Buckley says he did the school a tremendous favor.
His question prompted me to then think about how do we see the reflection of our true Catholic identity.
According to researchers at Georgetown University, of those who have entered religious life from 2005 on, white men and women make up an overwhelming majority. Asians account for 12%, Latinos 11%, Black only 4%, while other ethnicities came in at 5%. Father Alonzo Cox says these images have the power to transform hearts and maybe even help these students one day discern their call.
That's a major part of stirring someone's vocation by seeing an image of our Lord that looks like him.
Salve Regina is adding new diverse religious images to its halls all the time in the hope of one day having the ethnicity of every student represented. In East New York, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
And you can join in on the diocesan celebration of Black Catholic History Month this Sunday at 1 p.m. The Mass will be at Our Lady of Victory Church in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, and is in collaboration with the Archdiocese of New York. The Mass will salute traditionally Black sororities and fraternities from colleges across the country. Meanwhile, in Cuba, Catholic bishops and priests are voicing their support for citizens to be able to freely express themselves. It comes as citizens on the island nation hold protests against the country's communist government. The demonstrations coincide with the first day Cuba reopens its border to tourism following 2 years of strict measures to fight COVID-19. Ahead of protests Monday, the Cuban government cracking down on free speech, barricading a writer and activist inside his home. Patrick Opman has the story.
A bus blocks the street where a Cuban opposition activist lives. Cuban plainclothes police and government supporters prevent him from leaving his apartment, and journalists from going to talk with him. The activist, a playwright named Junior Garcia Aguilera, posted this video before supporters tell me his internet was cut off by the government. I woke up under siege, he says. The whole block is surrounded by state security, dressed as civilians, trying to pass themselves off as the people. After widespread anti-government protests in July, the largest since Fidel Castro's revolution took power, a group of activists led by Garcia Aguilera called for a peaceful march to take place on Monday. The activists say they are calling on the communist-run government to allow more liberties and release hundreds of people still in jail from the July protests. Cuban officials denied permission for the march, claiming it is a pretext invented by Cuban exiles and the U.S. government, who want to use rising tensions inside Cuba as an excuse to invade the island. The Cuban government has taken buses like this one to close off the streets. There are police everywhere. And there, in the distance, you can see a group of men, government supporters, perhaps police themselves, hanging flags over Junior Garcia's window. Apparently unable to leave his apartment or get online, Garcia Aguilera holds up his fist in defiance through his window until that final form of communication is also cut off. A government supporter tells me he lives in the same neighborhood and that he is proud to have confined Garcia Aguilera to his home. I was there when he opened the door, he says. I was close to him. He believes this is fascism, to not let him out. And I said it's not fascism, it's the people in revolution. After blocking the activist from leaving, a group of government supporters even holds a party outside to celebrate. When we interviewed him at his apartment in October, Garcia Aguilera predicted the Cuban government would try to silence him, unintentionally proving his point about what happens to those who call for greater openness. They have shown there's no rule of law, he says. There's no possibility for citizens to legally, peacefully, and orderly show their dissent to those in power. Other activists and government critics on Sunday said they were also being blocked from leaving their homes, but vowed that whatever the costs, they would make their voices heard.
That was Patrick Oppman reporting. The U.S. State Department issued a statement ahead of Monday's protests, calling on the Cuban government to use the event as an opportunity to listen and do what's right for its citizens. A taxi driver in Liverpool, England, is being hailed a hero for potentially saving 1,200 lives by stopping a suspected terrorist attack. It happened just seconds before an 11 a.m. moment of silence on November 11th, the UK's Remembrance Sunday, honoring its war victims. The passenger had asked to go to the city's Remembrance Day services at the Anglican Cathedral, but the cabbie, David Perry, got suspicious and locked the guy in his cab instead. It blew up in a ball of flames, killing the passenger. Perry suffered only minor injuries. 3 more men have been arrested in connection with the blast. Meanwhile, a humanitarian crisis is unfolding in Eastern Europe, with more than 2,000 people setting up camp at the border between Poland and Belarus. Matthew Chance takes a look at what these migrants have been through and the desperation of their plight.
With each day that passes, this refugee crisis is getting worse. Desperate migrants here in Belarus are camped against the razor wire set up by Poland to keep them out. Their dream of a new life in Europe, in sight, but out of reach. From above, amid choking thick smoke from fires to keep warm, you can see how more than 2,000 migrants from countries like Iraq and Syria are stretched along this frontier and facing an emergency exclusion zone on the other side. It's getting dangerous here too. Already Putin's Russia is backing its Belarusian ally. US officials accuse Belarus of weaponizing these migrants in revenge for human rights sanctions.
There is a blame game being played here. The West, the European Union, Poland, is blaming Belarus for encouraging these migrants to come here in the first place and then pushing them here towards the border. Belarus and Moscow are blaming the Poles for refusing to let them in. But it's these people stuck in the middle that are actually paying the price.
A point with which they seem to agree.
Attention, attention, attention. The police inform. If you don't follow the orders, force may be used against you.
From loudspeakers across the fence, this is Poland's uncompromising message. Don't even try it.
Attention, attention.
But that's not stopping daily attempts to break through. Belarusian officials deny helping breach the frontier, but they're not stopping it.
I want to look after for my family.
And how many of your family are here?
Two family.
Two families?
Yeah, my wife, my son, and my friend. I have three kids and wife.
Karwan, also from Iraqi Kurdistan, tells me he's tried and failed to get past the razor wire. Forced back, he says, with tear gas and pepper spray. Over the weekend, even more refugees have been flooding in, piling on the pressure. Belarusian officials tell us 5,000 people will be here in a matter of days, all desperate, freezing and trapped. Matthew Chance on the border between Belarus and Poland.
At the Vatican, Pope Francis tipped his hat to journalists, honoring two veteran correspondents who have been giving voice to the voiceless for decades.
Vi ringrazio anche per quanto raccontare su ciò che nella Chiesa non va, per quanto ci aiutate a non nasconderlo sotto il tappeto e per la voce che avete dato alle vittime di abuso.
The two journalists were bestowed with the Grand Cross of the Order of Pope Pius IX, a papal order of knighthood that recognizes outstanding service to the Church and society. Tuesday will be 1 month since those 17 Ohio-based Christian missionaries were kidnapped by a gang in Haiti. Sadly, there's very little new to report. The Biden administration received proof of life for some of the hostages about 10 days ago, and the FBI is still in negotiations with the gang, 400 Mowozo. Meanwhile, Haiti's economy continues to plummet following that massive earthquake this summer. The State Department predicts more mass migrations here to the U.S. President Biden signing the $1 trillion infrastructure bill into law. With the stroke of his pen, it's set to invest $550 billion into American roads, bridges, mass transit, ports, and waterways. There's also billions to improve the electric grid and water systems, and a package to improve the nation's broadband. There's a lot more news headed your way. U.S. bishops meeting in person for the first time since 2019, but we won't get to listen in why the media isn't invited to the first session. Plus this.
How can the youth group or program listen to everyone better?
A listening session at a Queens parish. This youth group getting a head start on the Synod process. And what a mess. College students flooded out of their dorms, just adding to a list of complaints they already have for their college. We'll hear from them.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
Scores of U.S. bishops from across the country are in Baltimore right now, kicking off their annual fall meeting in person for the first time in 2 years. The gathering is highly anticipated as the bishops are set to discuss the much-debated draft document on the Eucharist and the Synod process currently happening both in Brooklyn and across the nation. John Lavenberg, national correspondent for The Tablet and Crux, is there. He joins us now from the Baltimore Marriott Waterfront Hotel where the meeting is taking place. And John, unlike previous years, the first day of the assembly is closed to the media, so you won't be able to attend. The bishops are holding an executive session, something they usually do on the last day of the assembly. Why do you think that's happening?
So, Christine, the reports indicate that the reason they may be doing this executive session to start the conference would be to discuss some of the things on the agenda ahead of the public sessions tomorrow and Wednesday. In particular, it'd be the document on the Eucharist that's been of much controversy in recent months that people think is going to be aimed at pro-life, pro-abortion politicians. What I can say is there is a draft of that document that has circulated in recent weeks, and it's very tamed down from what the original document was supposed to be. In particular, it doesn't mention President Joe Biden or any other pro-abortion politicians or any groups in general at all.
You know, there was a lot of back and forth during the spring General Assembly over that teaching document. The bishops spent more than 2 hours talking about it before ultimately voting to move forward with drafting it. Secular headlines said it was about deciding who could receive communion. That's not the case, right?
the bishops really emphasized that this is a teaching document on the Eucharist for all Catholics, not aimed at anyone in particular, and especially not aimed at denying anyone in particular communion. And even if that isn't something that could even happen, because a bishops' conference can't vote to exclude anyone from communion under canon law, Canon 915 clearly states that it's up to the individual bishop of each diocese to decide whether or not somebody in that diocese can receive communion or not.
All right, and the bishops are also expected to talk about the synod process happening in dioceses around the country. It's allowing both clergy and lay people to have a voice in how the church moves forward. You had a chance to speak with Richard Cole, the USCCB's point person for the synod. Did he share anything with you on what we can expect?
He did, and what he said is we can expect 45 minutes on one of these public session days dedicated specifically to the synod. It's going to be broken in half. Half will be informational. That other half is going to be dedicated to the bishops, allowing them to ask questions, make comments about the process in their individual dioceses.
All right, we have a lot ahead. John Lavenberg, national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux. Thanks for chatting with us, and we'll check back in with you tomorrow.
Thank you, Christine.
John will be in Baltimore all week covering the bishops' meeting. Again, they're set to discuss much anticipated topics such as the Eucharistic document and the synod. John will have all the details Tuesday right here on Currents News. In the Diocese of Brooklyn, the synod process is in full swing. Our Lady of Sorrows in Corona, Queens, holding their 5th listening session Friday night with the parish's young people.
How can the youth group or program listen to everyone better?
Some of the suggestions developed by the young Catholics: shorter masses, more masses in English, and more inclusion. What parent isn't at least a little nervous when their child goes off to college? Well, Howard University students are probably fielding plenty of anxious calls from mom and dad right now after videos showing deplorable dorm conditions spread throughout social media. Justin Hinton reports it's part of a long list of problems the Washington, D.C. students are facing.
Is soaked.
Video Friday, captured by freshman Chandler Robinson, shows the mess dozens of students in Howard's College Hall South are now facing.
We were informed that the 4th floor through the 1st floor on the right side of the building had flooded.
At the same time, she's also one of the students occupying the Blackburn Center to protest living conditions and a range of other issues. Students say persistent mold was one issue they wanted administrators to address.
It's very tiring to be in the sort of fight or flight state for 33 days. And then on top of that, having to go back to your dorm and ensure that your belongings were not damaged or that your friends are in distress because their belongings were damaged.
Fortunate, her things weren't destroyed and she's able to stay in her room. But it's not the same for others. The school saying on Friday, quote, all students impacted have been offered temporary housing within the building. Campus apartment staff are also working with the impacted students to identify what was lost and search for ways to support their recovery. The statement never said what caused the flooding, just that campus apartments responded to the 4th floor and immediately notified maintenance technicians. It also said a remediation team began working around the clock to remedy the situation. And a contractor started drying the walls and checking for moisture in affected areas.
I do think that us taking over Blackburn has changed how they deal with these issues, and I'm very grateful for it. Had we not occupied Blackburn and occupied the Blackburn Student Center for so long, that these precautions would not have been taken and that mold would then have grown in my dorm.
That was Justin Hinton reporting. Howard University is now stating they have reached an agreement with the students who occupied the Blackburn Center, but provided no further details. Still to come on Currents News, a police escort for a very important guest in New York City just in time for the holidays. We'll show you. And from the roads to the skies, why these big balloons were flying more than a week before the Thanksgiving Day parade. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. A A New York City holiday staple has arrived. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree got its own private police escort on its way in from Maryland over the weekend. The 85-year-old 79-foot Norway spruce will be covered in 50,000 lights and topped with a 900-pound Swarovski star. The tree lighting ceremony is set for December 1st. And before we put up our trees, we'll all watch the balloons hover over Manhattan during the Thanksgiving Day parade. Last year's event was scaled back because of the pandemic. But before they put on their big show for the whole world, Baby Yoda, Pikachu, and all your other favorites got in a test flight over the weekend. This year's marks Macy's 95th annual Thanksgiving Day parade. The box office numbers are in, and a brand new musical starring a saint is a smash hit. Happening Woman is all about the life and times of Mother Cabrini, and all performances were sold out. Jessica Easthope attended the dress rehearsal at Our Lady of Mercy Church in Forest Hills.
Okay, everybody, places for Act 1.
It's true, Broadway is back. And sure, these lights aren't as bright as Times Square's, but Mother Cabrini shines in Happening Woman.
From the red, white, and green to the red, white, and blue.
The musical, which debuts at Our Lady of Mercy Church in Forest Hills this weekend, was written by parishioner Anna Marie Prono and is based on the life and legacy of St. Francis Xavier Cabrini, the patron saint of immigrants.
Is she okay?
Despite having founded the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and starting more than 100 hospitals and schools, Mother Cabrini was sickly all her life. Prono says she can relate.
She just did so much. She never stopped. I have MS. I kind of felt like I could identify with her a little bit.
The play jumps back and forth between the late 1800s and present day.
Thanks, Mom.
Part of Cabrini's story is told through the eyes of 13-year-old Kathy, a Catholic school student with multiple sclerosis, fighting to get Mother Cabrini a statue after the saint was snubbed during the She Built NYC controversy in 2019.
These women both overcame obstacles, and that's what our message is, that yes, you can do it.
As New York City dealt with the height of the pandemic, inspiration flowed for Prono and composer Bob Kaufman.
Almost Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Now their faith is taking center stage.
I wanted to give Catholics something that they could feel good about. The songs are very upbeat. They are unapologetically spiritual.
And the audience still has a lot to learn from Mother Cabrini.
When you consider what she did in her life, when all the odds were against her. With God, all things are possible.
People will get to see the real Mother Cabrini when the curtain rises. In Forest Hills, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
And while the curtain has closed in Forest Hills, producers have started a GoFundMe page to bring the play to more churches in the diocese. If you'd like to support the cause, search for Happening Woman at GoFundMe.com. Sounds great. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.